Hi, my name is Jeff. I am the UX lead at Career Foundry. We are an online school. We sell courses. We're based here in Berlin. We sell courses in UX design, UI design, web development, and maybe some of you have come to some meetups at our office. Yeah, so I'm talking today about the future of voice UI, voice user interfaces, or VUI. I think my coworkers are playing a drinking game. Every time I say VUI, they drink, so feel free to play along if you want. This is just a combination of some of the stuff that we have in our new VUI course. I took some material from that course, turned it into a presentation, and it's also a lot of the stuff that just excites me about the interface. So this is what I'm going to be talking about. Rise of the voice interface, a VUI in every home, 7 reasons to be magical, and then QA. So let's go ahead and talk about the rise of the voice interface. I have totally not mirrored my screen. Just a sec. Don't read my notes. Okay. So even though voice interfaces have been a thing for around 30 years, it's time it's finally a part of mainstream technology. So we've had them for around 30 years, but they weren't really working so well, and now they're starting to finally catch up. I know I had one on my compact Presario when I was 12, but now I think it's actually workable. So let's talk about what took voice interfaces into the public ear, like why now? What's the recent thing? So for most of us, this was our first experience with a VUI. It was called voice search, and Google pioneered this before really I think any of the other tech companies did. And as soon as they did this, around 1 or 2 years later, 20% of all searches were voice searches. So it caught on pretty quickly. And some of you might remember this little app. In 2010, this small app was released in the App Store for Apple. And then in 2 months, Apple bought it and called it Siri and made it into a native app. So once they made it into a native app, every single iPhone was sold. They sold this app as a function of the phone. So it was no longer an app, but it was something that was worked into the hardware. And Apple was kind of showing their commitment to voice interfaces there. So it's starting to catch on. And then here you have 2014, Amazon created a standalone VUI device. And it brought VUI devices into the marketplace. It was really the first one of its kind to get popular. And ever since then, it's kind of been a major player still. It's still on top. And since then, some VUI devices have become smaller and more affordable. They're making their way even more to the mainstream. The Amazon Echo Dot was the most popular thing on Amazon over Christmas. They wouldn't release the official numbers, but Jeff Bezos said millions. If you were to design a voice experience today, it might look something like this. This is kind of a breakdown of how it works. So the UX is made up of 3 parts. There's a physical device, there's an app, the thing, the experience that you want, and then there's a platform that powers it. And these are some of the big players right now. And what's great about these platforms is they're all cloud-based, and then you just need the device in order to run them. And this is kind of how this caught on at first. So you design your interactions to work with a very specific platform and device. And in this example, this is a vegetable app powered by the Amazon Alexa platform, and it's accessed on the Echo. So you can create an app like this in our VUI course. You actually, I don't know if you quit one quite this good. One of my coworkers, Chloe, made this aubergine app. She's on our curriculum team, and she did it to test out our VUI course and just, kind of practice what you preach. So these are the kind of things you can do right now. So if you wanted to create an app for Alexa, it looks like this. And just like with smartphones, they're starting the innovation off as an app. I think this makes a lot of sense because they're solving UX challenges right now with these apps, or as Amazon calls them, skills. And these are the major VUI platforms. And so as these guys advance, it's going to be really interesting because I think that third parties are going to find it easier to build on top of these platforms rather than build their own. So right now, everyone's building their own, like car companies, everyone. But I think it would be interesting to see if people will jump onto a platform that exists. It kind of reminds me of what happened with the iOS and the Android platforms. So as these devices and the platforms continue to evolve, by 2020, the smart assistant space alone is supposed to be worth around $3 billion, or euros. Today we're on the left side here. So this is why I would say that these experiences feel a bit mediocre. I think the real magic happens when we move over to this side, to conversational. Command and control, conversational is the way people describe VUIs. It's the established terminology. But what's interesting is they talk a lot about conversational UIs. I'm sure you've heard CUI in every conference buzzword, whatever, but as of right now, that doesn't exist. I mean, there's a little bit of back and forth on the Google Home now versus the Amazon Alexa, but there's nowhere near anything getting close to human conversation. And if you look at this for voice user interfaces, I think it might help put it into context if you look at what maybe command and control is for a touchscreen interface, and maybe what conversational might look like for a touchscreen interface. So this is the IBM Simon from the 90s. It was one of the first touchscreen phones. And then 10 years later, we had this iPhone, and now all the phones look like that, and we can't live without them. So I think it's possible that something like this could happen for voice user interfaces. So what's going to be the iPhone of voice user interfaces? It's really going to take advantage of the power of this interface. And then they'll make the first truly conversational device when they do that. And there's been some huge advances, and obviously in speech recognition is a big part of the tech behind this. Most of these smart assistant companies are somewhere around 5.5% word error rate, and humans are 5.1, so it's basically the same. So I think that one day we're going to look back at this gadget and we're going to think, how archaic? Why was it so big and clunky? Did you really have to bark orders at it to get it to work? How come it couldn't tell that I was having a bad day? And why didn't it feel human to me? Okay, so to the next section. Before I get into the future of VUI, now that I've kind of caught you up on where we are in VUIs right now, I'd like to talk about one of today's challenges. So I'd like to know how many of you have a VUI in your home, like a Google Home or an Amazon Alexa? 4, 5, seems pretty low, even though Bezos said millions. So I think that there's a bit of a concern here that I'm starting to pick up on. And you can, if you look at the latest Google Home Mini, you can see that they're already trying to address some of these concerns. This is a mute switch, physical hardware thing that they've added to it rather than just a button so that you feel like it has definitely been muted. So we're getting at this privacy concern that people have in the back of their minds. But I don't think this is solving it yet. I think it seems pretty silly to turn off the mic for a VUI because then it doesn't work and you just got like a $30 hockey puck that plays on your coffee table. So that it feels like a Band-Aid solution to a greater problem. But what's the worry that people have here? I think this is the worry. What if someone's listening? And what's the first thing you think about when you think of a microphone inside your home? I think with me, it's a bug department and a spy movie. That's the first place my mind goes. Maybe I'm just weird, I don't know. But if we think about the conceptual model, well, there I go talking about conceptual models. Let's talk about this like it's a UX problem. So the conceptual model of a bug flat is that the microphone is always on, it's got power, it's always recording, and even someone is listening to it or recording what you say on a tape and they're archiving it somewhere. And there are no signifiers if someone is listening. So that's the whole point. You hide the signifier so no one can tell the department's bugged. I think this is one of the underlying reasons that people distrust things like the Google Home, and it's going to be a big hurdle. But the reality of all smartphone owners is that you have 2 cameras, 1 GPS unit, and 1 microphone in your pocket. And a lot of people seem to be worried about the VUI in their home, but they have one in their pocket. So it's not just bugging your home, it's bugging your entire life. Okay, no one seems to be freaking out yet, that's good. So I wanted to get that out of the way because that is a huge hurdle that we're going to have to overcome with design before VUI is in everyone's home. And it may not happen, but I think that these are things that we can solve as we're designing these apps. I think we should seek to find solutions that address the ethical concerns and the conceptual models and keep those in mind. So we can still get full utility out of VUIs, but do it in a smart way. Yeah, Venn diagram, drink for that too, probably. It's a design presentation, so bound to happen at some point. So I don't think we get to decide if VUIs become a thing, but as designers, we get to decide how they're designed. So these are some really interesting ethical challenges, and I wanted to bring them up first because when I gave this talk before, That was the only thing people wanted to talk about, and I don't want it to be a talk about the ethics of UI design. But I think it is a really interesting challenge, and I think challenges like this, the collision of the future of tech happening today, there's a lot of really interesting ethical challenges in design today. So I think we have a responsibility to do that in an ethical way. I think we're kind of in a bit of this Jurassic Park situation maybe with VUIs, but don't worry, we'll have time for questions later if you want to get into any of that stuff. So finally, I'm going to talk about the future of VUI, what that could be, and then here's some reasons that I think this interface is going to be magical in the next decade. So this is a bit of a no-brainer that a whole new audience can now access things we take for granted because the visually impaired can take full advantage of what you build. Right now, 253 million people live with vision impairment. 81% of those people are aged 50 or older. So with VUIs, those visually impaired people are no longer an afterthought. In fact, they may even become power users because they can listen to text at an incredible rate, sometimes twice as fast as other people. So as VUI designers, you should recognize that superpower and you should design accordingly. Talking is faster than tapping. This one also seems like kind of a no-brainer, but Stanford actually did a study on this recently to see which was faster, tapping or dictating on a smartphone. They expected dictating to be faster. They really wanted to test the tech that exists today. So they used a very common platform. They didn't say which one, but something that we can all use. And it ended up being the dictating was 3 times faster than tapping. And not only was it faster, it was also way more accurate. And they made a fun little video on YouTube if you want to check that out. So anyone that's ever used a nightmarish UI like this can understand why TV remotes are all getting VUIs these days. I can't look at that anymore, sorry. Voice is hands-free, eyes-free, and omnidirectional. So with voice, all you need is your vocal cords and a brain. And you can interact from any position or direction. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with that. This is one that excites me as well. I think experienced designers, event designers might find this interesting. But it requires very little from the user physically, right? You can speak to a small microphone where you're cooking, and you don't have to alter your behavior in any way. I think this is an ad for Google Home. Obviously, they know that. They're trying to sell that. But I think it's when you can place the device anywhere and it picks up your voice easily. I find this really interesting. And it'll be really cool to see what people can do with experience design in the future. Because it's so easy to put a mic somewhere and you don't have to even look at it. You don't have to, point at it. You don't even have to have hands and you can still use it. This is one of the reasons that I think we don't get to decide if VUIs become a thing because VUIs are so much cheaper and smaller than touchscreens. I don't think you guys were drinking VUI. Not only are VUIs economical, there's also no limit to how small they can become. So touchscreens are very expensive and they break very easily, as we all know. The new iPhone X is reportedly the most breakable phone ever and the most expensive. So imagine tech that didn't require buttons or screens and was capable of anything you can do with a touchscreen, just using the VUI. The cost could be dramatically reduced to the point where everyone could afford something like that. So rather than tapping on your $1,000 iPhone X, you could have a $2 microphone that connects to the cloud. Even the smallest touchscreens today, like the Apple Watch, you can never really go smaller than a finger's width, because what's the point of a touchscreen that's smaller than a finger's width? Kind of pointless. Does anybody know what this is? It's not the red pill from the Matrix. This is advertised as the world's smallest Bluetooth headset, if you Google things. A device like this in your ear is practically invisible. So imagine having the power of all human experience and knowledge inside your ear with this device. I think you start to see how VUIs can be something approaching magical. UI designers are going to love this one. So imagine you could design one experience that works on every screen imaginable. So with VUIs, this is possible. Because of the ways that these are set up, remember this slide from before? You've got your platform, your app, and your device. So as long as your platform is in the cloud, the device can change and the experience remains the same. So you can simply design an interaction and it works from any device. Whether that's your phone, your Bluetooth headphones, or even just a mic that's strategically placed somewhere. Right now in society, we tend to be glued to our phones. And that's because it has everything we need in our digital lives. I think, even for your alarm clock, you use your phone. But with strategic placement of VUIs, you no longer need your phone constantly with you. And I can imagine a world where I'm not terrified of losing my device and I can walk around free. Speech conveys more meaning than text. So this is where you start to see some really interesting things with VUI, because there's so many hidden layers of meaning in a voice. And as we start to map the nuances of language, which is already happening, VUIs will appear to read your mind. So have you ever misinterpreted a text message? It's really difficult to convey emotion and mood with just text. That's why some of us use lots of emojis. It's the same problem when you're interacting with your technology. So as you're listening to me talk right now, you can probably tell a couple things about my voice. So maybe you can tell that I'm American, that I'm male, that I'm reasonably young, that I'm maybe a bit nervous, and that I probably had too much coffee and Club Mate today. You may not realize it, but you can actually tell when a voice is smiling. And knowing that the speaker is smiling can be really helpful if you're trying to read things like sarcasm, for instance. That's something that hopefully our VUIs will be able to do one day. And then our interactions with technology become more human. So interaction design for voice is really just a conversation with technology. The more human the conversation feels, I'd say the better the experience gets. But sci-fi taught us that conversations with technology would either be really boring, annoying, or downright dangerous. So Google makes these great little ads. I love these. They demonstrate the power of their Google Home products. And I decided to make a few of my own to demonstrate what might happen when VUIs become more human. So imagine a personal assistant that could optimize your health and schedule based on just the quality of your voice. Or it could give you advice based on past conversations. Nice, nice. Or it could maybe keep better track of your memories than you can. I put this slide because I'm terrible at telling stories and I love this. But see, in this situation, it doesn't just help you one-on-one, it could help a whole group of people. You trust it that much. Speaking of trusting it, one day we may look at VUIs as experts in human interactions. They can handle such complex things as depression even. With VUIs, there's no need for onboarding. The interaction is a natural part of our development. So long after our vision and motor skills begin to fade, speech often remains. So to recap, the visually impaired can take full advantage. Talking is faster than tapping. Voice is hands-free, eyes-free, omnidirectional. VUIs are cheaper and smaller than touchscreens. The device can change, but the UX remains the same. Speech conveys more meaning than text, and our interactions with technology become more human. So who gets to create the future of voice? I think you do. I think UX and UI designers are the most equipped to design these future interfaces. And if the future I present excites you, or challenges you, or scares the shit out of you, I would encourage you to talk with me after this. We've got some interesting opportunities in voice design. This is our voice user interface design course. It's geared towards designers. And a lot of the stuff I pulled from this presentation are from this course. And it's very hands-on. So within about 2 weeks, you're creating an app for Alexa. And it's really interesting because it goes into some of these ethical and privacy issues as well. And if you're considering just a career in design in general, we have longer UX and UI courses that take you from absolute beginner to your first job. And the larger UX course also includes the voice course as well. So come talk to me or one of your foundry people if you're interested in this. Any questions?
Well, first, thank you, Jeff. So I'll be running around with the mic so we can test this voice stuff. First question.
Well, do you think that we need actually to feel that this kind of VUI more human, like as an ethical question or whatever, is like, do we have to forget that we're still talking to a machine and deal with it like in a human way?
Yeah, I think that I've already seen this in places, people saying that as a guideline, be very clear when you're talking to a human or not a human, because in the future you may not be able to tell. So I think that's going to be a really important thing. That I didn't get into really any of that AI stuff where, you know, if it becomes a better experience, it's more human, right? But I didn't really get into what does that mean for the world. I think there's a lot of questions that get raised with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
You're like so convinced of it. Okay. So one thing that I thought was so interesting as you were speaking here is that we are, like myself and yourself, we're so at totally different ends. Like you're so convinced of this VUI, and I had an Alexa and like completely unplugged it after like a day because there was one chance that it went off when I was speaking to my girlfriend, and it freaked me out. So it's like, why is somebody listening to me while I'm talking? So my question to you, I guess, is that you're so convinced of this. If I feel that I'm on the rebel side of Terminator, and Terminator is, you know, coming in the form of a VUI, what is it that makes you so calm to say that it's not going to be taken for granted, and that in a room full of designers, what is it that they can do in order to really make sure that that ethical standpoint stays true no matter what happens to the development of this technology?
I mean, I kind of touched on that a little bit, I think, with clear on-off switches.
More than that, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think that these devices won't be the way they exist today when they're actually as popular as I'm saying. I mean, if you look at that IBM Simon, like that phone sucked, and I would have taken it back in the day, just like you did with Alexa. But 10 years later, I think you're going to be the only one without it. It's possible that I'm wrong. I mean, it's not like my career or anything's got stake in it. I see some correlations between what happened with touchscreen. And if you look at Apple's revenue model, like once they started getting to touchscreen interfaces, their revenue went from 25 billion to 250 billion. And I think that people have seen that and they're thinking the same thing might happen with voice. So I think in the end, it's money that's putting into it. I think it's that they're going to sell a lot of them.
I know it's like a three-part question, but isn't that scary?
Yeah, I think it's scary, but.
Like I'm sitting here like, this is coming whether we like it or not. It's more of like, whether you want to design for this, it's more of like, you need to design for it and get ready for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's GPS in your phone, and that was a big issue when that came out, but we try to get ways around it.
I was just going to say, like, if it does scare you, then that, like, seeing it coming, that does empower you to be the person who is in charge of the ethics and make sure that it's not a complete fuck up. Like, you can learn from, like, the complete lack of a clear ethical stance taken by any sort of, like, big social media company, for example. It's easy for us to say now, like, shit, Facebook should have actually defined its like, positions on, like, you know, how they do news feeds. Like, Twitter should have some sort of clear policy on appalling right-wing hate groups, like, being allowed this platform. So seeing that, being concerned about it, I think that should be the motivation that makes you go, cool, let's actually design this with those ethical considerations in place, because you don't have to repeat that same mistake of, you know, becoming, like, wildly unbound without a clear sort of moral compass. But you can be scared by it, or you can go, oh shit, like, cool, this is the moment to actually take a hand in it.
Yeah.
I think we have time too. I think it's going to be a while before this thing is like an issue. I mean, it's like getting more popular. I think that recently, I think over Christmas, it kind of showed like everyone's parents were getting an Alexa because they were like $30 and they were like giving them away basically. And I see why they're doing it. You know, they want to make it in the home. You know, and that could be a bit scary, right? But you could also look at phones in the same way.
True.
Next.
Yeah. It sounds to me like this is a completely new discipline or a separate paradigm from the user interface, user experience that we all are accustomed to or comfortable or familiar with. I think a lot of people that come into this discipline comes from a graphical, visual discipline, a lot of times that don't even have anything to do with computers, art as a background, for example. So my question would be, what is the paradigm here? Who are you trying to recruit? Who are companies trying to recruit as visual I'm sorry, voice, quote unquote designers, this doesn't really seem like it's this, even in the same discipline or field that most of us might come to define our careers as being. And I've been sitting here listening to your presentation, trying to understand this, and I think the best way to try to understand that is who are companies trying to recruit to do this kind of work, and what are the backgrounds that they're looking for?
They always say that it's psychology, linguistics, and computer skills, but I see designing the UI interface as pure UX, as in like if I don't know how to do UI, I can still design, because you're just essentially designing really complex user flows. And then, you can, I think in the future, you're also perhaps feeding into an algorithm that they've sort of created. And I think that UXers are also in a good place for that, to feed good data into a system. So I think it's definitely more of a pure UX task. I don't think it's very difficult for someone who's really into the more upfront discovery of UX, like the double diamond, maybe like the first diamond. Those kind of people, I think, will find it a lot easier to deal with the UI interfaces, the voice user interfaces. But yeah, I think that I haven't checked in to see who's recruiting and what those people are like. I think that there's a lot of like core computer programming skills that a lot of those people have.
Feedback.
Also, to follow up on this question, I don't have a graphical background, visual background. I have a great interest in psychology and people, users, and I definitely also see this field as very relevant. And I also think that someone like copywriters, someone who knows about conversation trees, someone who knows about storytelling is definitely the ones that could be relevant to recruit this.
Yeah.
Narratives and storytelling and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, conversation trees is one of the things you create in our course.
Okay, when we talk about user experience, in a visual word, we mean typography, we mean colors. So, for instance, every company trying to stand unique with defining these things. So, how would you see this would reflect on VUI? How can a company address itself as a unique in such terms?
It might feel a bit scary, but it's the same thing that makes you different than the person sitting next to you. It's that you're creating a personality, not just a persona. And I think you've seen that when you ask, Alexa, a funny question. I think that's one of the main uses for it right now. Sometimes if you don't really have a lot of like smart internet things in your home, Wi-Fi connected things, it's just talking to it and it's being funny. And I think that is going to be a really important thing. Is you say that right now there's like colors and fonts and brands and things. Those things seem really subtle compared to a personality. When things become a lot more human, I think that it'll be much easier to make stands on how their brand persona is, and it'd be a much tougher job, I think.
Isn't that sad though? Like that's sad, man. No, I mean the guy has a relationship with his phone. It's like I watched that movie, I cried. Because it's like the guy's never gonna be with the phone. I'm serious. Like, he's never gonna be with the phone. So that's why I was asking before, like, what do you think? It's just because I look at that and I see it's a cure for loneliness, it's a cure for people with disabilities, it's a cure for a lot of things. But it's one thing that, like, to have such a personality in my home, I'd never want that. I'd want a person,
Yeah, I think in the future it won't really be just like a standalone VUI device. I mean, the iPhone had accelerometers in it, it had like GPS. It's going to be a combination of things. And the remotes, the smart TV remotes where they have a microphone on them, I think that's kind of where it's going. It's not like standalone, that's a VUI. It's going to be like, oh, everything's got voice because I don't want to type something.
Yeah, like there's gonna still be situations where you have to have a blended situation with a GUI and a VUI. Like if you're looking at images, an image app, you can't just have it. So it's not completely going to replace the need for UI design.
Yeah, Amazon's new thing. It's not the Echo. It's like this little alarm clock looking thing, and it has a screen on it, and sold out within like 5 seconds of being open. And I think that's the sort of thing that you'll start to see. It's not just the UI standalone.
That's a really interesting point about, like, I've done a lot of reading and research about social media usage, and have now basically stopped using it. But I think that does more damage to us than what the UI potentially could do, because our attention span is down to 8 seconds. Average American adult checks their phone like 260 times a day, I think. And is that a human relationship? Me checking some photo of someone I knew like 10 years ago, posing, whatever, on holiday. Like, that's not a meaningful relationship. So yes, in an ideal world, we go back to pre-technology and we actually talk to each other. God forbid. But it's as an interesting point or an interesting thing to think about. I would see this as a better interaction. Actually.
Yeah, it's actually. Sorry, these are things we didn't make. This they've shown that, and this is not a very scientific graph at all. I don't remember exactly where I got this, but the voice UI, when you're using it, is much more attention grabbing. But when you're not using it, just fades back away. So I think I like that better. I haven't tried cooking with one yet. So
I agree that there's always going to be AI.
Yeah, and that's a discussion that that needs someone who has a degree in that in philosophy. That's why Google is hiring these people.
Well, first of all, as much as we include blind people by switching to VUI, we exclude deaf people, and that's the reality. Second of all, like, what came to my mind is it like, if and ever devices, like personal devices with screens and visual like interfaces become obsolete, will it be able to use voice UIs as in like a group? Like, would all of us here be able to like use their assistant to text, or would we really have to somehow find a way to read our thoughts like Facebook did, so that we can be able to communicate and like text someone, or will that become obsolete? Like, there's like the use cases are vastly different from the ones that we have right now.
Yeah, I think the fastest way to communicate seems to be voice, but even faster is a brain-machine interface with something plugged into your head. Sure.
Like, it would be impossible for all of us to speak at the same time in text, because
like we're doing right now in our room. You mean with speech?
yes, like if it's about on us use their phone to text someone right now, we can do it. But if we had a voice user interface, we couldn't do it because it would be too confusing for it.
Oh yeah, I mean the noise. Yeah. I think that's a problem. It's a problem that somebody else.
Not only for like the interface we will not understand, but like also if I go to my friend's place that has an Alexa, I can use his Alexa, and Alexa doesn't really know how to speak. Yeah. So I can, like, when he's in the background, change the music. It's like there's so many things that are new that we haven't really, or like
It reminds me of the fingerprint touch ID. Like, who would have thought that you could turn that IBM Simon into that? And so I think it's possible to read your voice, just like every spine movement, like walk up to the door and like show the waves. I think this is possible. I hope it's happening. It's cool. But yeah, I think that this is the kind of thing that will happen in the next 10 years. Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, so we're done here. Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you.